Hi everyone, I'm Inbreadable, and I craft everyday objects but they're made out of bread. As you know, Halloween is coming. To celebrate that, I'm gonna recreate the iconic scene from the classic horror film, The Ring. And by that, I meant the 1998 Japanese original, not the shitty Hollywood ripoff. As a bonus, I also want to make the entire thing edible, including the hair. Well then, let's begin. So here's the thing. I usually make my figures entirely out of unleavened bread, but that would make the whole thing super hard to chew. However, making it out of leavened bread might make it too soft and the whole thing could collapse under its own weight. So I thought I'll try a hybrid approach where the basic shapes are made with soft pillowy bread, but held together by smaller pieces of a much sturdier flatbread. Before we even start baking, I find it helpful to make a simple mock-up out of tinfoil. That way, I can get a better idea of the proportions and figure out how I'm gonna attach everything together. After building the mock-up, I came up with a rough plan. I'm gonna split the whole thing into individual parts, pre-bake them separately, then pin together and full bake the whole setup with these support rods, which are just super thin breadsticks. Now it's time to cook. With my leavened dough, I rolled out the basic shapes for Sadako and the TV, then pre-baked them for a few minutes. Even though I made the pieces smaller, the dough still poofed up larger than I expected. So I did some impromptu trimming to make Sadako slimmer. Cause even though she's already dead, I still needed Sadako to stick to toxic female body standards. After giving Sadako a much needed weight loss surgery, I tried to piece her together with my breadsticks. Immediately I knew something was wrong. The pieces weren't holding together properly, and the whole thing was rather wobbly. Still, I told myself that lots of egg wash and a second time in the oven should make everything stable. It did not. Worse still, Sadako ended up with big gnarly man hands. I tried desperately to fix everything with more cosmetic surgery, but just like many other celebrities, I knew it was only making things worse. So finally, I decided to scrap the whole thing and try again. After a good night's rest, I was able to look at the situation with a clearer head. I realized that because there are so many moving parts and the supports were disjointed, the whole thing fell apart under its own weight. So instead, I'm gonna try a different approach. I'll start off with a hard internal skeleton, then wrap the leavened dough around it. So I drafted up a new set of blueprints and made a new skeleton for Sadako 2.0. Because she's crawling out of a TV, I made a simple tinfoil mold to keep her skeleton curved while baking, so that Sadako would eventually have a nice mermaid pose. Now that her skeleton is done, it's time to flesh out Sadako again. This time round, I made sure to use a lot less unleavened dough so that Sadako won't be as bloated as last time. After a quick tan in the oven, it's time to give Sadako some clothes. To make my life easier, I'm gonna dress her arms and body separately, then join them together again. I also added some creases and wrinkles to her dress cause nobody's clothes are that pristine if they have to crawl out of a TV. Of course, it wouldn't be The Ring if Sadako doesn't have the TV to crawl out from, so that's what I'm making next. I start off by baking a block of bread, which I covered with some sheets of blackened dough to form the outer casing. I'm also adding a little shelf to prop the TV higher so that Sadako would really slide down from the TV. Because I screwed up my loaf earlier and didn't feel like baking a new one, I just glued the remaining bits together to form a rough rectangular block, then cover up my mistakes with more black dough. And now it's time to put it all together. While my original plan was to pin the pieces together with some breadsticks, they had become too soggy after chilling in the fridge overnight, so I caved in and used toothpicks instead. By then, Sadako was starting to fall apart, and so was my sanity. But I was so close to the finish line, so I pushed through. Luckily, with more egg wash and dough to patch up the gaps, things were starting to improve. For the finishing touch, I made Sadako's hair out of some roasted seaweed. To make the hair more flowy, I cut the seaweed into strips before soaking it in water and gluing it into Sadako's head. Then it's off to the oven for a final time to make everything set. While Sadako is busy roasting in the oven, I thought I'll make a little diorama for her to sit in. For that, I cut a corner out of a cardboard box, then reinforced the sides with masking tape. To make the floor look like it's lined with tatami mats, I layered the bottom panel with rows and rows of even more masking tape. As for the walls, I covered them with black construction paper to help sell the spooky vibe that I was going for. And also because I was too tired at this point to make anything more complicated. Now that Sadako's out of the oven, it's time to put her in our homemade scene and film her glamour shots. Well, all that work is making me hungry, so let's dig in. Surprisingly, the crispy and salty seaweed goes really well with bread. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another incredible project.